You're not holding on to clutter, you're holding on to a life. Every letter, every quilt, every faded photograph carries a piece of your story. And that's exactly why letting go feels impossible. It's not just about objects taking up space, it's about the fear of losing pieces of yourself, the moments that shaped you, the people you loved, and the life you built. That's why so many of us freeze when we open a closet or lift the lid of a box. We're not overwhelmed by stuff, we're overwhelmed by meaning. But here's the truth most people don't realize. Keeping everything doesn't protect those memories, it actually buries them. When your stories are hidden in dusty boxes, stacked in garages, or pushed to the back of closets, they're not being honored, they're being forgotten. And that's not what you want. What you want is a way to keep the heart of those memories alive, without drowning in the weight of things you can't use or see. That's what today is about. I'm going to share practical, uncommon ways to keep the memory, honor the item, and still reclaim your space. If you've ever stood in front of a box and whispered, "I can't throw this out," then you already know how heavy that moment can feel. But stay with me, because you're about to learn how to turn those moments into freedom and peace. And if you're ready to take that first step, hit like and subscribe, because this video is made for you. Step 1. Name the keeper's guilt. The very first roadblock most people over 60 face when they try to declutter isn't laziness or even lack of time, it's what I call keeper's guilt. This is the heavy, nagging feeling that shows up the moment you pick up an item that matters to you. The hardest part isn't deciding if something is junk or trash, those decisions are actually simple. What really stops you cold is asking yourself, does this deserve a place in my home, or am I being selfish for holding on to it? Daphra June, a 72-year-old retired nurse living in Michigan. She had spent her whole life saving things that felt important: her late husband's fishing gear, boxes of her children's artwork, greeting cards from decades past, and family heirlooms passed down through generations. Over time, those treasures filled her attic until it became a place she avoided. But here's the truth, Daphra wasn't avoiding the attic because she was lazy. She was avoiding it because she was afraid. She once told me, "If I start opening those boxes, I'll have to decide what to do with the pieces of my life. And what if, in trying to clear space, I erase my story?" That fear is exactly what keeper's guilt looks like. It's the voice in your head saying, if I let this go, I'm letting go of the person I was, the people I loved, or the moments that made me who I am. And here's what makes keeper's guilt so powerful. It convinces you that keeping everything is safer than making a choice. So instead of sorting, you shut the box, put it back on the shelf, and promise yourself you'll deal with it another day. But days become years, and the weight of those untouched boxes only grows heavier. This is the moment where so many older adults feel stuck. They want a simpler home, but they also want to protect their memories. Keeper's guilt tricks you into believing you can't have both. The attic, the basement, or that spare room becomes less of a storage area and more of a reminder of decisions left unmade. The truth is, you are not lazy, and you are not weak for feeling this way. Keeper's guilt is a universal struggle for anyone who has lived a full life. You've built decades of memories, and of course you don't want them erased. But acknowledging this guilt is the first step toward breaking its hold. Once you name it, you can start separating the fear of loss from the reality of living in peace. Have you ever stood in front of a box or a closet and felt that exact guilt, wanting to simplify but terrified of losing a piece of yourself? If so, type yes in the comments. You'll see how many others are walking the same path, and you'll know you're not alone. Step 2. Give every item a job. One of the biggest mistakes people make after 60 when trying to declutter is thinking the decision is simply keep or toss. That mindset creates pressure, guilt, and endless second-guessing. Instead, shift the question completely. Don't ask yourself if you should keep it, ask yourself, what's this item's job today? Every object in your home is either working for you or taking up valuable space. If it doesn't have a job, it's silently weighing you down. So here's the test. An item must do one of three things to deserve its spot in your life. First, is it protecting a memory? This could be your mother's quilt, your father's pocket watch, or a handwritten letter from a dear friend. These are not just objects, they're anchors that hold moments of your life steady. But to truly count, the memory must be clear and meaningful, not just vague sentiment. If you can hold the item and instantly recall the story, then yes, it's protecting a memory worth honoring. Second, is it teaching a story? Some items aren't just personal, they are part of a legacy. A military medal that can help your grandchildren understand sacrifice. A recipe card that explains your family's traditions. A collection of postcards that shows the places you traveled in your younger years. These objects become teachers. They don't just remind you of your past, they pass knowledge forward. Third, is it bringing me joy right now? This is the most overlooked question, especially for seniors. Many homes are filled with keepsakes that stay tucked in closets or sealed in boxes. But if an item never sees the light of day, never makes you smile when you walk past it, and never serves a purpose in your daily life, then it isn't actually bringing joy, it's just holding you hostage. True joy comes from items you display, wear, or use. If something doesn't fit into one of these three categories, protecting a memory, teaching a story, or bringing joy right now, then it's unemployed. And here's the hard truth, unemployed items don't deserve premium space in your home. Just as you wouldn't keep paying for a service you never use, you don't need to keep objects that take up your energy without giving anything back. This shift in thinking is liberating because it moves the decision away from throwing away and toward assigning value. You're not discarding your past, you're making sure every single thing in your home earns its place. When you do this, you begin to see your home not as a storage unit, but as a living museum of your life, curated, intentional, and full of meaning. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Some of those so-called unemployed items can still keep working for you in new ways you may have never imagined. That's the surprising twist many seniors discover once they start asking the right question. What's this item's job today? Step 3. Convert the item into a story. Here's a truth few people talk about. The power of an item isn't in the wood, fabric, or paper it's made from, it's in the story it carries. A chipped teacup is just porcelain until you remember it was the cup your grandmother used every Sunday afternoon. An old fishing hat is just fabric until you remember the day your father wore it on your very first trip to the lake. What you're holding onto isn't the object itself, but the memory it unlocks. And this is where the real shift happens, because instead of keeping every physical item, you can keep the story, and the story will outlast the object every single time. Think about how many boxes you've seen in an attic, basement, or closet, stuffed with things that were meant to keep the memory alive. But here's the problem. Once tucked away, those items are rarely seen, rarely touched, and eventually forgotten. That doesn't protect the memory, it buries it. By storing the story instead of the object, you bring it into the light and make sure it continues to live on, even when the item itself fades, breaks, or has to move on. The process is simple but powerful. Choose one meaningful item, a photo, a letter, a piece of clothing, or a keepsake. Take a clear photograph of it, capturing its details. Then, instead of just snapping the picture and moving on, record a short audio message in your own voice. 2 minutes is all it takes. Describe what it is, who it belonged to, and why it matters. Tell the quick version of the memory tied to that object. Finally, pair the photo and the audio together in a digital album. Call it My Legacy Box. Imagine your children or grandchildren opening that album years from now. They don't just see a blurry snapshot of an old ring or a faded letter, they hear your voice explaining why it mattered, what it meant to you, and the piece of your life it represents. That's a memory preserved in a way no cardboard box ever could. This method has another benefit. It allows you to honor objects you may not have space to keep without feeling like you've lost them. You still have the essence, the emotion, and the memory, and you've made it portable and permanent. And unlike the physical object, a digital album can be copied, shared, and treasured by multiple people at once. For seniors especially, this approach is a gift. It protects the stories that might otherwise vanish when boxes stay sealed for decades. It allows you to pass down your history in a format younger generations actually use and understand. And it relieves you of the guilt that comes with letting go of the object itself, because you know the heart of it is safe. So when you're holding that item and asking yourself what to do, remember this: you don't have to keep the thing to keep the meaning. The story is what matters most, and the story is what will last. Step 4. The Heirloom Trial Run. For decades, the common advice has been to hold onto your heirlooms so you can pass them down someday. The problem is that someday often comes too late. Families are left sorting through boxes without context, wondering what was valuable, what was sentimental, and what was simply kept out of habit. The sad reality is that items meant to be cherished can end up sold in estate sales, donated to strangers, or, worse, thrown away, all because no one understood their importance. That's why I recommend something different, something unusual but deeply powerful, the Heirloom Trial Run. Instead of waiting until you're gone, test your treasures now. This step takes the guessing game out of legacy. It's not about giving everything away at once, it's about choosing a few meaningful pieces and letting the people around you interact with them today. Maybe it's your son and his father's old fishing rod. Maybe it's your niece and the quilt that's been folded in your cedar chest for years. Maybe it's your neighbor who once admired your vintage record collection. Place the item in their hands while you're still here to see what happens. This trial run creates 3 possible outcomes, and every one of them gives you valuable information. The first outcome is pure joy. Their eyes light up, their hands linger on the item, and they immediately start imagining how they'll use or display it. That's the moment you know, this piece has found its rightful future. The second outcome is indifference. They may thank you politely, but you'll sense that the item doesn't spark connection for them. That's not rejection, it's clarity. You've just saved them from feeling guilty later and saved yourself from holding on to something no one will use. The third outcome is surprise. Sometimes people connect to objects you never expected. A grandchild may feel deeply drawn to a necklace you thought was ordinary, while the valuable furniture piece you held onto might get little attention. The beauty of the Heirloom Trial Run is that it brings honesty to the process. It helps you see who actually values certain items and who doesn't. And it does something even more important, it lets you witness the joy of giving while you're alive. You're not just handing over an object, you're sharing its story, explaining its meaning, and watching someone else step into that history with appreciation. That shared moment is a memory in itself, and it's something your family will never forget. For seniors, this step is liberating because it removes uncertainty. Instead of leaving behind a mystery of unlabeled boxes, you get to clarify now which items matter most, and you do it with love and intention. It also prevents your children or relatives from feeling burdened later with things they never wanted. They can be honest in the moment, and you can redirect items where they will truly be appreciated. The Heirloom Trial Run isn't about losing things, it's about giving them new life. When you see your granddaughter hang your vintage brooch on her jacket, or your neighbor play a record you thought would stay in storage forever, you realize the story continues in ways you never imagined. And if an item doesn't connect with anyone, that's not failure, it simply means it needs a different path, one where it can still serve and be valued. By testing your heirlooms now, you replace guesswork with clarity, guilt with gratitude, and burden with joy. It's one of the most meaningful steps you can take, not just for your home, but for the people you love most. Step 5. The Community Legacy Trick. When most people think about decluttering, they picture donation bins or yard sales. But here's a truth that rarely gets talked about. Some of the items sitting in your closets, attics, or garages could actually hold value for your entire community. What feels like an old box of stuff to you might be a treasure for a local library, historical society, or even a school. Seniors often overlook this because they assume their belongings are only meaningful to family, but the truth is, many of the objects you've saved are snapshots of history that younger generations are hungry to learn from. Take Daphra, the retired nurse from Michigan. She had a stack of teaching journals from the 1970s, filled with notes about her early days of instructing nursing students, reflections on medical changes, and even doodles from long nights of lesson planning. To her, they looked like personal papers, valuable to her memory, but not necessarily to her family. Her kids glanced at them and said, "Mom, we wouldn't even know what to do with these." For a while, she thought they would just end up in recycling. But instead of throwing them away, she contacted a local school archive. To her surprise, the faculty and students were thrilled. Those journals became part of their resource collection, living proof of how nursing education evolved over the decades. This is the power of the community legacy trick. What was once hidden in a dusty box turned into a resource, a teaching tool, and a way for her story to continue far beyond her own family circle. And that's the beauty of it. You don't just declutter, you elevate the meaning of your belongings by letting them enrich others. Think about what you might have. Old photographs of your town or neighborhood that could be valuable to a historical society. Vintage recipes that a community cookbook project would treasure. Handwritten letters, postcards, or diaries that capture daily life in an era younger generations never experienced. Uniforms, medals, or tools that could be displayed at a veterans group, library exhibit, or senior center history wall. Even collections, stamps, records, or local memorabilia that could be used in school projects or exhibitions. These aren't junk. They're cultural time capsules. And when you place them in the right hands, you ensure they'll be appreciated, studied, and preserved in a way a private closet never could. For many seniors, this step brings an enormous sense of relief. It removes the guilt of wondering, what will happen to all of this when I'm gone? Instead, you see your life's pieces put to work for others, carrying your story forward. And you don't just save space in your home, you gain the satisfaction of knowing your belongings are now part of something bigger than yourself. The community legacy trick changes the perspective. Decluttering is not just about removing. It's about redirecting. By choosing carefully where certain items go, you're not letting go, you're creating a ripple effect of meaning. You're turning personal history into shared history, and that is a legacy worth leaving. Step 6. The rotation ritual. One of the biggest mistakes seniors make when it comes to keepsakes is believing that every meaningful item must be displayed all at once. The result? Crowded shelves, cluttered tabletops, and a sense that instead of honoring your treasures, you're suffocating them. When everything is on display, nothing truly stands out. That's why so many family heirlooms, though carefully saved, end up blending into the background like wallpaper, never really noticed, never really appreciated. The rotation ritual is a fresh alternative. It's a way to let your keepsakes breathe, to give them the attention they deserve without overwhelming your space. The concept is simple but powerful. Instead of keeping 12 fragile keepsakes locked away, or worse, crammed together on one overcrowded shelf, choose one item to highlight at a time. Place it somewhere visible, like a living room shelf, a bedside table, or the entryway where you'll pass it every day. Then, every new season, rotate that piece with another from your collection. This small act changes everything. Suddenly, instead of feeling guilty about hiding your treasures in boxes, you're celebrating them. When guests come by, the new display naturally sparks conversation. One month it might be the seashell you picked up on a beach trip in 1975, and next season it could be the quilt square stitched by your grandmother. Each rotation invites new memories, new stories, and new appreciation. The item shines because it's given space and time to be honored on its own. The beauty of the rotation ritual is that it doesn't require giving anything away. You still keep your collection. But instead of letting all those items gather dust, you create a system that brings them forward one by one. It keeps your home fresh, dynamic, and uncluttered, while ensuring nothing you love gets forgotten. This is especially powerful for seniors who feel torn between keeping everything visible and keeping a tidy home. The rotation ritual offers the perfect balance. You don't have to choose between order and sentiment, you can have both. And here's another benefit. It helps you stay connected to your own story. By rotating items, you're revisiting memories regularly, instead of letting them stagnate in storage. You'll find yourself smiling at the same keepsake with fresh eyes when it reappears after months away. It's almost like meeting an old friend again. This approach is also kinder to fragile items. Instead of constant exposure to light, dust, and accidents, they get periods of rest in safe storage. That extends their life while still allowing you to enjoy them over time. For seniors in the United States especially, where homes can be filled with decades of belongings, the rotation ritual is a simple, gentle way to stay in control of your environment. You reduce clutter without giving up what matters. You tell your story in chapters, one piece at a time, instead of overwhelming yourself and others with the entire book at once. Decluttering doesn't always mean saying goodbye. Sometimes, it means learning to say hello in a new rhythm, by letting each item have its moment to shine. And when you do, your keepsakes stop being background clutter and start becoming living parts of your daily joy. Step 7. The 10/90ths photo rule. Photographs are one of the hardest forms of clutter to deal with after 60, and for good reason. They're not just pictures on glossy paper, they're proof of life lived, milestones celebrated, and relationships cherished. Yet for many seniors, photo collections become overwhelming. Showboxes, albums, digital files, and envelopes tucked in drawers start stacking up until the sheer number of images makes it impossible to enjoy them. The irony is that the more photos we save, the less often we actually look at them. That's where the 10/90ths photo rule comes in, a simple but powerful shift that can free you from the weight of thousands of images without losing a single memory. Out of every 100 photos you own, only about 10 truly capture the essence of your story. These are the photos that, when you see them, your heart leaps. They speak loudly. They represent a person, a moment, or a chapter of your life so clearly that you don't need 3 or 4 near-identical shots of the same scene. The remaining 90? They are important, but they are whispers. They might be duplicates of the same vacation sunset, slightly blurry versions of the same birthday cake, or endless group shots where you can barely remember who's in the back row. They fill space without adding meaning. And while it may feel risky to let them go, here's the key: those 90 don't need to disappear. They just need to be digitized. Digitization is the bridge between preservation and simplicity. With today's tools, flatbed scanners, smartphone apps, or even local services, you can easily create digital copies of those 90 photos. Once digitized, they are safe, accessible, and shareable without taking up physical space. This means you can keep the entire story, but you only physically hold onto the 10 photos that truly define it. Imagine opening an album where every page feels meaningful. Instead of wading through 50 nearly identical snapshots of your grandchild's graduation, you keep the one that captures their smile as they toss their cap in the air. That single photo tells the story better than all the rest combined. When your children or grandchildren look through your album someday, they won't be overwhelmed by stacks of filler. They'll see the highlights of your life, the moments that mattered most to you. For many seniors, the hardest part is believing they are allowed to let go of duplicates. But the truth is, by following the 10/90ths rule, you're not erasing your story, you're sharpening it. You're making it easier for others to connect with your memories without drowning in repetition. And you're giving yourself the gift of clarity, the ability to look at your photos and instantly feel joy instead of stress. The 10/90ths photo rule isn't about loss. It's about refinement. It's about trading clutter for clarity, piles for peace, and excess for essence. Because the truth is, your life story deserves to be told clearly, not buried under thousands of nearly identical snapshots. When you honor the 10 that speak loudly and digitize the 90 that whisper, you protect both your memories and your living space. Step 8. The Bless and Release Ceremony. One of the deepest challenges of decluttering after 60 is not the decision itself, it's the emotion that follows. You hold an item in your hands, and suddenly it's not just fabric, wood, or paper. It's the laughter of your children when they gave it to you, the touch of someone who is no longer here, or a reminder of a chapter of life that shaped who you are. No wonder so many seniors freeze at this moment. The guilt of letting go feels heavier than the object itself. That's where the Bless and Release ceremony changes everything. This isn't just another tip. It's a ritual, a way to give closure to the act of parting with something you once treasured. Instead of tossing it into a donation box or trash bag with regret, you pause. You hold the item in your hands, take a breath, and recognize what it has meant to you. Then you speak a single line of gratitude out loud. Something as simple as, "Thank you for serving me well," or "Thank you for carrying this memory." By voicing appreciation, you shift the act from loss to acknowledgement. The item no longer leaves your life unrecognized, it leaves honored. The next step is to capture its essence. Take a photo of the item, clear and simple. This picture becomes a memory marker, a reminder that the item existed, that it was part of your journey, and that you took the time to honor it. For many seniors, the photo provides comfort, allowing them to release the physical object while still keeping its story within reach. Finally, let it move on, with intention, not guilt. That might mean donating it to someone who can use it, passing it to a family member, or even recycling it responsibly. The act of blessing the item first allows you to feel peace instead of regret, because you're not discarding, you're releasing. And release, when done with respect, feels freeing instead of painful. This ceremony matters because it reframes the entire process of decluttering. It acknowledges that your belongings aren't just stuff, they are chapters of your life. And chapters deserve to be closed with dignity. By blessing and releasing, you make peace with the past while making room for the present. You're not erasing your story, you're curating it. You're choosing which pieces will live on with you and which will continue elsewhere. For seniors especially, this ritual provides an emotional anchor. It gives you control over a process that often feels overwhelming. Instead of carrying guilt for what leaves, you carry gratitude for what it gave you. Over time, the bless and release ceremony transforms decluttering from a painful goodbye into a respectful handoff, one that honors your history while protecting your future peace of mind. This is not about throwing things away. It's about letting them go with love. And when you practice this consistently, you'll find that every release leaves behind not emptiness, but a quiet sense of relief, clarity, and strength. For years, Daphra June's attic felt like a weight pressing down on her. Each box was a time capsule, sealed tight, carrying echoes of her past. Yet instead of joy, those boxes filled her with dread. She rarely opened them, afraid that sorting through them would feel like choosing which parts of her life mattered most and which could be forgotten. In her own words, her attic had become a graveyard of boxes, a place where stories went to hide. But step by step, something began to shift. Rather than seeing decluttering as an act of erasure, Daphra started to see it as an act of liberation. She learned to ask the right questions. What's this item's job today? She began turning objects into stories through photos and recordings. She shared heirlooms with loved ones while she was alive to witness the joy they brought. And with every intentional choice, the attic's hold on her weakened. Her breakthrough came when she created something she now calls her legacy shelf. In her living room, on one simple wooden shelf, she displayed a carefully chosen handful of treasures: her father's pocket watch, a quilt her mother stitched by hand, and a stack of recipe cards worn soft by years of use. Each item had a clear place, a clear story, and a clear reason to be there. No longer hidden away, they became daily reminders of her journey, sparking conversations with her children and grandchildren every time they visited. The rest of the attic didn't vanish overnight. Instead, she took a thoughtful approach. Items with strong memories but little practical use were digitized, photographed, labeled, and paired with short audio notes in her own voice. The result was a digital archive that her family could browse anytime, a living collection of stories safeguarded against time. Other belongings, like her husband's old fishing rods and her own collection of vinyl records, were passed down directly to family members who wanted them. Watching her loved ones smile, laugh, and even cry as they received those items became a gift in itself, a gift she was able to experience while still here. Today, Daphra says something she never thought she would: "I didn't lose my story, I finally get to live in it every day." Her attic is no longer a storage vault of guilt. Her home feels lighter, but richer at the same time. The memories that once gathered dust now breathe in the open, and the weight of indecision is gone. For seniors like Daphra, the lesson is clear: decluttering isn't about stripping away your past, it's about choosing how you want to live with it now. By curating what stays visible, preserving what matters digitally, and releasing what no longer serves, you don't shrink your life, you make more space to experience it fully. Daphra's transformation shows that it's not about losing, it's about finally reclaiming your story in the present tense. When most people think of decluttering, they imagine loss, piles of things being thrown into bags, memories being erased, homes being stripped bare. But that's not the truth at all. Decluttering, especially after 60, isn't about erasing your past. It's about deciding how you want to carry your story forward. Your keepsakes aren't clutter. They are chapters, pages filled with the people, places, and moments that shaped you. The danger is when those chapters are sealed shut inside boxes, left unread, and slowly forgotten. A story can only inspire, comfort, and teach when it's being told, not when it's locked away in storage. Think of it this way: every item you've kept has meaning, but meaning only lives when it's active. A quilt tucked in the attic isn't warming anyone. A recipe card hidden in a drawer isn't feeding the next generation. A photo buried under hundreds of duplicates isn't sparking joy or memory. When you allow your most important keepsakes to come into the light, whether on a legacy shelf, through a rotation ritual, or in a digital archive, you're making sure your story continues to live, not fade. You're giving yourself the chance to enjoy those memories every day, and you're giving your loved ones a way to understand who you are and where they came from. This is the resolution. Decluttering doesn't shrink your life, it amplifies it. By letting go with intention and keeping with purpose, you're not discarding history, you're curating it. You're building a home that reflects not just where you've been, but who you are today and how you want to be remembered. That shift from storage to storytelling is where peace lives. It's where guilt is replaced with pride, and where the heavy feeling of too much is replaced with the lighter feeling of just right. So now I want to turn the question back to you. What's the single item in your home that feels hardest to let go of? Not because it's useful, but because it feels tied to your story. Share it in the comments. I read every single one, and you may find that others have faced the same struggle. You're not alone in this journey. And if today's steps gave you a fresh way to think about your keepers, take a moment to hit like on this video. Share it with a friend over 60 who's standing in front of their own boxes, unsure of what to do next. And don't forget to subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors. Because your memories deserve more than storage, they deserve to be lived, celebrated, and passed on with intention.